Ah, you've arrived. Welcome. You must be interested in investigating the inner workings of Steam Court. Maybe even try your hand as a court engineer yourself. Join me. Steam Court is a trick-taking party game based on Victorian hierarchy for 2 to 6 players. Tonight, we are playing with 5 players. Select and set up the character cards recommended for 5 players and gather the matching character tokens as well. Place the character cards on the table in descending order. Her Royal Majesty the Queen should sit at the head of the table, and in clockwise fashion, to her left, should sit her General, the Wealthy Duke, the Reclusive Alchemist, and finally, the lowly Tea-Boy. To begin, allow each guest to randomly select a starting token. Then, they will sit behind the corresponding character card. In Steam Court, players are tasked with the upkeep of the court's mechanical devices. The player to go out first will garner the Eye of the Queen, her good graces, and the privileges she bestows. The game lasts 4 quarters. The player with the highest total score wins. The deck consists of 12 numbered gear cards. There are 6 of each of these cards. There are a few special cards as well. The Masterstroke is wild. It completes a machine instantly, winning the trick, and nothing can beat it. The 3-9 and 6-12 cards are flexible. They can be played as either number, whichever the player prefers. And the Multiplier card, when laid with a number card, allows a player to announce whatever number of sets he wants to play. We'll explain that more during the game. In the game, players are attempting to get rid of their cards as fast as they can. An engineer will begin the trick by laying a card or set of matching cards on the playmat. Following players must lay the exact amount of cards, but with a higher number than the previously laid cards. For example, if the Queen were to lay 2 1s, the General would have to lay 2 higher numbered matching cards. The Duke would do the same, and so on. The player to lay the highest card would complete the machine and win the trick. The Tea-Boy's privileges include shuffling the cards each quarter. No one else should be expected to handle those hobbity-hoy's chores. He should deal all of the cards into equal hands for the players, plus an extra hand called the court hand. If the deck doesn't shuffle out evenly, then the extra cards can go into the court hand. Before any machine building happens, players should read the back of their character cards to understand what privileges they must exercise during the quarter. The Queen's Engineer gets to give her 2 worst cards to whomever she decides. The Tea-Boy must give the highest player at the table his 2 best cards. The Tea-Boy's Engineer does have the opportunity to trade his cards for the leftover court hand, sight unseen. He must keep any cards that are given to him by the Queen, but he may discard the rest if he feels that the court hand could profit him more. The General's Engineer gets to give his 1 worst card to the second lowest player at the table, and the Duke and Alchemist privileges will be used during the game. According to her privileges, the Queen's Engineer gets to lead the very first trick of the quarter. Here you can see that Melissa has played 2 1s. She actually gave Ryan, the Tea-Boy, a 2 and a 3 during the privilege stage because she knew that she would be able to get rid of both of her 1s together on her first run, leaving her with a 4 as her lowest card, and Her Majesty is off to a good start. Now the General's Engineer has played 2 5s. Dukes lays 2 7s. Alchemist lays 2 10s. The machine has gotten too rich for the Tea-Boy, so he flips over his card and passes. Play continues around until everyone has passed. So continuing with Her Royal Majesty's Engineer, we see her lay 2 11s. The General's lays a 12 and a 6-12. And the Duke also lays 2 12s. The Duke grants his engineer the privilege of not having to lay higher matching sets. He's permitted to lay the same numbered cards as are already on the table, and he still beats it. At this point, the only higher card that could be played is a Masterstroke. Let's see what happens. The Alchemist's Engineer passes. Queens passes. General passes. And the Duke's Engineer wins. The gear cards are removed from the playmat, and now the Duke's Engineer gets to lead off the next trick. He starts the machine by playing 2 3s. Katie lays 2 4s. And the poor T-Boy's Engineer passes again. He actually has cards he could play, but he doesn't want to split them up because he hopes they will be more powerful as a set of 3 later in the game. The Queen's Engineer lays 2 8s. The General's plays his 11s. Kevin does it again, using his privilege to match the 2 11s. The Alchemist's Engineer is forced to pass. The Queen's passes, and it's back to the General's Engineer, who plays a Masterstroke. And this card automatically completes the machine, so even though the Duke might want to play a matching Masterstroke, he can't, because the trick has been completed. Play will continue in this fashion as players try to use all of their gear cards in order to be the first one to go out. Let's fast forward just a bit and see what happens. We can see that my Lord's Engineer is down to his last 5 gear cards. He leads with 3 4s. The Alchemist ability allows her to transmute any numbered card and play it as exactly 2 numbers lower. So she plays 2 7s and a 9, or 3 7s. Ryan has been holding on to his multiplier card the entire game and decides that it's finally time to pull it out. He plays a 10 and a multiplier, in effect playing 3 10s, and hopes to win the trick. The Queen's Engineer exhausted most of her powerful cards too early and is now stuck with low cards in her hand. She passes and play continues to the General. Will also passes, and it's back to Kevin. Pass, pass, and it looks like the T-Boy's Engineer has won his first trick of the game. He finally gets rid of his hand of tiresome 1s that he's been stuck with the entire game. The only time a player will ever get to play a 1 is if he leads. Based on the results of our last trick, there's a good chance that no one has 3 cards of a kind, so these 3 1s are actually quite powerful at this point. Yet everyone has passed, and it's back to the T-Boy. He's also been holding on to 3 2s, one of which the Queen gave him. Instead of leading the next trick, he just plays 3 2s right on top. Now everyone has already passed, so he completes the machine and then leads the next trick. He still has the Queen's 3s to get rid of, so he leads with those. The Queen's Engineer smiles, and she finally gets a turn to play and lays a 6. The General hasn't exercised his privilege yet, and Will determines that it would be wise to stick the Queen with her 6. The General grants his Engineer the ability to stop another player from laying a card until the next time around the circle. So Her Royal Majesty's Engineer has to pull her gear card back into her hand. Will lays a 7, and the Duke's Engineer has to pass. If he can just get rid of his 6, he'll be the first one to play all of his gear cards. The Alchemist passes, and the T-Boy's Engineer decides to play his 3-9 as a 9. It's back to the Queen now. She was skipped by the General, but not removed from the trick, so she plays her 10. And after everyone has passed, the machine is complete, and she starts the next trick. At this point, most of the players are down to their last couple of cards. This is where it becomes critical to play them in the right order. Melissa is down to 2 cards, a 6 and a 3-9. She knows that if she plays too low, Kevin will lay his last card and win. If she leads with the 9, likely someone can still beat her and she'll be stuck trying to get rid of a 6. She decides to lay the 6, hoping the General's engineer will play a high enough card that the Duke will not be able to go out. The General looks at his cards. He knows that he won't be able to go out first, so now it's just a matter of whether he can go out second or third. He decides to pass and keep his 2 8s together. The Duke's engineer is thrilled. Just by the skin of his teeth, he's able to exercise his privilege and play his last card. That means in the next quarter, the Duke's engineer will move up to serve the Queen and garner her privileges. Kevin takes the highest tokens in order to claim his spot. He lays down his character card, and now he gets to sit back and watch the rest of the quarter. Play will continue until all of the engineers have played all of their cards. After the Duke went out, the T-Boy's engineer passed. The Queen's engineer laid her final 3-9 and took the next numbered token. This will be her starting point for the next quarter. The remaining players had already passed when Melissa played her last card, so the player to her immediate left gets to start the next trick. There it is. The General's engineer plays his last 2 cards and will be moving down 1 seat for the next quarter. The Alchemist's engineer can't play 2 8s and neither can the T-Boys, so the cards are cleared and Katie begins the next trick. She plays a 3 that she's been stuck with the entire game, and Ryan plays a 4. Katie plays a 5 and the T-Boys engineer plays his highest card, an 8. Fingers crossed. Yes, the Alchemist engineer has to pass, allowing Ryan to play his final 5 and go out. It's not a big jump, but at least he won't be stuck at the lowest number of the table in the next quarter. The Alchemist engineer faces her fate and draws the T-Boy token, marking the end of the first quarter. The quarter has ended and it's time to shuffle everything and everybody. The Queen has chosen a new court engineer and everyone must reshuffle according to the character cards which they were assigned, according to the order in which they went out. Once everyone is reseated, it's the duty of the T-Boys engineer to shuffle and redeal all of the cards. Players will repeat the same process from the previous quarter, each player exercising his pre-game privileges in order from the top of the table to the bottom. The Queen's engineer will lead the first trick and play will continue until everyone has used all of their gear cards. Players will end up reseating a second, third and fourth time, and then based on the value of the tokens they've claimed over the course of the game, the player with the highest total gear tokens will win, garnering the Queen's good graces, and the bragging rights that go with it. To understand the final scoring of the game, let's look back to the very beginning when players randomly selected their characters. For a 5-player game, starting tokens 1 to 5 would be used. Starting token 1 representing the Queen's chair and 1 point. Token 2 for the Duke and 2 points, and so on. Gear tokens are totaled together and the winner is the player to have had the best overall standing.
Hey guys, I'm Will. And I'm Ryan, and welcome to Tantrum House. Thanks so much for watching our walkthrough of Steam Court. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself and learned a little bit about our game. We know we kind of breezed through those last 3 quarters, but they play very similar to the first one, except for with the added anticipation of climbing the ladder to the top.
If you'd like to know more, you can check out the rules and ask us questions at steamcourt.com.
Thanks again for watching, and go enjoy some Steam Court.